when tool selections being made or systems are being made, don't make those decisions from the top down without including input from the frontline people, because if the decision is a bad one, they're the ones who are going to feel the pain of that, not you.
Welcome to the Thrive Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Potter, and we're dedicated to guiding tech founders and entrepreneurs along the path to success. So let's dive into today's blueprint for success. Today I'm joined by Scott Potter, CTO of Thrive Advisors, and Kevin Peterson, COO of Data Capable. Thank you guys for joining me. Navigating the complexities of operations is a feat every growing tech company must master. Today, we'll delve into the evolving operational necessities of maturing tech firms. Cyber threats are rampant in our digital age, Scott. Can you discuss the pivotal role of data security in today's operational landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Bill. So it really does play a pivotal role, not only in just maintaining smooth operations within the organization, but countless times, whether you see it in the headlines or clients that have come to us with a lot of pain after a data breach, it really takes a negative toll, both blocking operations, but also negatively impacting that trust with their stakeholders and customers. So when companies are looking at either improving or implementing some kind of data security policies and procedures or framework into their operations, it's really critical that they take a layered approach to that and make sure that they have both compliance and regulatory needs under control, making sure that they have obviously the right tech in place to mitigate threats as threats change and evolve, but also making sure that employees are engaging with security awareness training to stay abreast on all the kind of evolving threats with email phishing and a lot of the challenges that we're seeing today. But it really is a pivotal part of their strategy.
So as a security advisor, do you find that clients come to you proactively before they have a security breach?
I wish. We love when that happens. It would be a lot less headache for everyone involved to take a proactive approach. Obviously, as we unpack issues that come to us, we then resolve those issues, but then take a more measured and a proactive approach with some of those things that we were just talking about by layering in the right security protocols, make sure things like change management are in place to minimize disruptions, but also from a security standpoint, make sure that all the company data is protected, how they interact with data is done in a secure fashion. So yeah,
those are great, cautionary moves to make and preventative moves to make. But when you're a tech startup and you don't have a cybersecurity background, what do you advise tech startups? How do they reach out and determine who to talk to or where to go to find out what needs to be done? And who do they engage?
They come to Thrive. No, that's a great place to start. But in general, you want to bring the right people to the table that have that expertise. From a non-technical perspective, there's a wealth of information out there from regulatory compliance that really sets the tone for the framework that businesses should follow. Kevin and I were talking previously about things like SOC audits and certification, and really there's a lot of different flavors of that, but when you're not sure where to start, there's a lot of good overlap between a lot of these different frameworks that point you in the right direction of what to implement, what to pay attention to, and what to secure.
Right. And following up on that, Kevin, you were not a founding member of Data Capable. You came in a few years after the startup. What was the security measures that you brought to the table?
So I think more importantly than the security measures I brought to the table is the mindset I brought to the table around this subject. And I think it's a prudent frame of mind to think this isn't a question of if this is going to happen to us. It's a question of when this is going to happen to us. Now, it may never happen. You may never hopefully, fingers crossed, you never have to deal with that situation. But if you should be expecting it, and if you're expecting it, then you need to get your house in order, right? And then there's also an element of this that it's all about risk management. Like if you're expecting it to happen, you're already thinking about what you're going to do once it does happen and what the impacts of that are. And then you can start putting mitigating measures in place.
I think that mindset is terrific, because I've always heard the old saying is there's two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that are unaware that they've been hacked.
Exactly.
So Kevin, there have been countless learning moments throughout your journey. Please tell me a time of seemingly minor operational decision that created unexpected waves.
I think that's every operational decision that's made. But a specific time that we made an operational decision that had a rippling effect that maybe we weren't attuned to before it happened, and before it unfolded, was we started putting a management system in place. And I came from a background of a very robust set of management systems, and I unknowingly started putting pieces of this management system in place, and I wasn't attuned to how ready the business was for that change. And as a result, we started getting less productivity out of the business. So that's very clearly a bad operational decision. And the key is the right systems at the right time, and evolve those systems for your business. And when I say the right systems at the right time isn't after the need arises. The right time is anticipating the needs that are going to arise and putting those systems in place so that you aren't having to react. The more you can be proactive, the less pain any of those operational decisions are going to be.
Excellent point. Scott, I know that you've worked for a global company, and operating globally is a double-edged sword with its regulatory intricacies. How do you strike a balance between compliance and the agility in such a dynamic tech environment?
Yeah, a great question. And it's definitely depending on the size of the organization and where that organization operates. It can definitely be a difficult challenge to overcome. I would say, maybe a good example is, companies that operate in the EU, when they had to transition and adapt to compliance frameworks like GDPR and kind of the big undertaking that comes with that. If you're working in a situation where more or less your compliance requirements are focused, like the EU is GDPR, but then you might have a company in California that's working with CCPA, which has a lot of the similar regulatory requirements. Really the kind of best strategy is to build a team that is surrounded by industry experts that focus in that area of compliance. Have them focus, one on CCPA, one on GDPR, for example, but then combine and come back together and say, how can we implement these across the company, but allow them to operate independently within their own compliance discipline, if you will, and then combine, the departments at the right time.
Yeah, I think for me, when I hear all of these compliance terms, and trust me,
there's a lot.
It's a complex environment to navigate, but it's a necessary one to navigate. I think the key to making good decisions around these topics is really understanding your risk. So you're going to make changes and pivots in your business, and as you make those changes and pivots, your risk change. And there are early stages in the business where your risks are much lower. Like, you're not on anybody's radar. You're probably less likely to have a breach. But as you get visibility, and visibility doesn't necessarily mean your company's getting bigger. The optics of your company are getting bigger, regardless of, whether you have that banner client or the revenue that goes with it. But as your optics get bigger, your risk change and your risk profile gets bigger. So being aware of how you're perceived outside of your own world, and understanding that as those optics change, your risks change, and pacing those pieces with the changes in your business, while not stifling all of the innovation in your business. And that's easy to say. It's really tricky to kind of sort through all of that.
Well, you and I were chatting a little bit offline about Data Capable and SOC compliance, things like that. Can you just briefly touch on that journey and what, how that might have changed the company and the operations, or was it pretty easy to adapt to?
Yeah. So when we think about any of these compliance frameworks, and this would be a recommendation I would have for any company in the early stages, you don't have to go down the path of full compliance with any of these things. But you're not being prudent if you're not understanding where your gaps are. So there is a way to kind of progress through a lot of these compliance frameworks in a way. Start by, you can very easy, very lightweight, do an assessment and understand where all your gaps are. And then you can start filling those gaps in concert with the way the business is moving. Two-factor authentication. Maybe you don't need that when you have 3 employees in the company. But you need to know that is a gap that's going to need to be filled and not too far in the future. And that's kind of how we've tried to approach this. Understand where our gaps are, understand where the biggest risk in those gaps are, fill those, and in the process know that we're working towards being fully certified as an organization. And if you're working, you also have to look at what your customer base is, right? Like, if you're working with Fortune 500 companies, you're working with large utilities, their expectations of your security framework are much higher. So you need to know if that's the type of client or the type of customer you're going after. You're also adding a lot of burden onto the business. So maybe you start with your target audience. If you're not there yet, start with a different set that have less security requirements, and as you build that base, as you work towards being ready to go into some of these larger companies.
Good point. Kevin, you joined Data Capable probably what would be considered when they were an early stage company, and in light of rapid technological evolutions, how would you advise companies as they work toward an operational infrastructure to make it resilient and adaptable?
Yeah. So again, it's the mindset from the beginning. If you need to, what I would suggest to everybody is know from the beginning, no matter how clearly you think you see the future of your business, no matter how clearly you think your products are defined, no matter how clearly you think your market is defined for you, that's going to change. So start day one knowing that you have to have a mindset of flexibility and adaptability. And then with that as a known factor, you have to continually measure risk and lay in the pieces that make sense for the business in the stage that business is in. Because the worst thing you can do was when you asked me to share an example, Bill, what was an operational decision that you made that was a bad operational decision, and what were the impacts of it? You have to balance innovation, adaptability, flexibility with these very rigid frameworks, and you have to figure out how to take the pieces of the framework that make sense for the business without actually crushing your business with overhead.
Very good. Scott, there are so many choices with operational tools today. How should tech firms evaluate and select platforms that complement their growth visions?
Yeah, great question. I think it from an early stage, it definitely requires input and collaboration from across the company. A lot of times what you'll see is a team will introduce a new product or tool or technology that works really well for their workflow, but creates overhead and distractions and loss of productivity for other parts of the company. So definitely a process around vendor selection, making sure that it's flexible and scalable with how the business operates, and making sure that it's going to work for all of the business's workflows today, but also in the future, so you're not having to switch tools later down the road because it couldn't handle the growth that you achieved or didn't have the future workflows in mind when you were building out the product originally. So it's definitely a thoughtful approach to making sure that it's going to meet the needs today, but also in the future, but also getting input and buy-in from other departments as well.
If I had one piece of advice that I could give here when tool selections being made or systems are being made, don't make those decisions from the top down without including input from the frontline people, because if the decision is a bad one, they're the ones who are going to feel the pain of that, not you. And they're also the ones that know what those impacts are going to be in their roles. I'm not saying you make them the decision maker on this, but absolutely include them in that decision process, because you don't know what you don't know.
Sure. Great. Well, Kevin, the tech sector has seen massive operational shifts, notably cloud adoption, remote work revolution. How have these transformed your operational playbook?
Yeah, so cloud computing hasn't been a big change for us internally. We built out our entire platform in the cloud from day one, but the piece that we didn't anticipate well enough on this front was the willingness and adoption of our clients, right? So like the cloud computing front was absolutely the right and clear decision for the business. It provided us the flexibility, the scalability we needed in the future, but all of our customers, or some of our customers, were not yet ready to adopt cloud computing. They were still skeptical.
From a security standpoint?
From a security standpoint, we always do everything in-house. There was a regulatory challenge for our customers from a cost recovery perspective. I won't dive down into how utilities make money, but there was no incentive for them to adopt lower cost solutions in this case, because the incentives were more aligned with them being able to adopt on-site and put infrastructure on sites.
Has that been a challenge for utilities to CapEx those solutions if they're, I see.
Absolutely. And you hit the point. It's an O&M expense for a lot of utilities. And here is where, inconsistencies across the industry become a real challenge. We're serving the entire industry across the entire country and internationally, but utilities are regulated at both a federal level and at a state level. Federal level is kind of like, here's the minimum you have to do. State regulators, they're paid positions, their jobs, like they are building on top of that. So you might be 100% in compliance and in a great place and have your story and have your technology lined up where it needs to be for one state. And if you aren't understanding who your customers are, you may be going into another state and be pitching the absolute wrong thing and kind of barking up a tree that you're not going to get anything out of.
So Scott, while tools and tech are crucial, the human element remains vital. Can you touch upon ensuring team cohesion with, especially when operations are globally distributed?
Yeah, I think for most people, we experienced that kind of shift around COVID as well, in terms of picking up where we had in-office team cohesion, if you will, and trying to morph that into this remote work world that we have today. It's getting back to more of a hybrid now, but in terms of ensuring team cohesion and using tools to get there, a lot of the firms that we work with use tools like Slack and Zoom to kind of keep that team collaboration going, communication channels open, but also, there's still that in-office experience that I think a lot of, we were talking about company culture a little while ago. There's components to in-office that are lost when you're remote. And so I thought one entertaining way that a remote team accomplished that is they wasn't necessarily work focused, but they kept that cross-functional team bonding going by they actually had a chef do a cooking class remotely over Zoom. Everyone's in their kitchens. So it was really just this way to kind of keep the teams in touch with each other and still have that team bonding while all of us working at different states, different countries. So it's kind of an interesting approach.
That's along the lines of the story that you told in another episode about how you have regular meetings on Monday, stand-up meetings, and you're not global, but you're at all ends of the United States. And so I would imagine the same holds true for Data Capable.
Well, we do have employees in Abu Dhabi, in the Philippines, in Honduras. So we do small, but we do have a global workforce, and we do work across all time zones. So the problems are the same regardless of whether you're just in a US-based company that's spread across 3 time zones, or if you're spread across 24 time zones. But the humans are your most dynamic and your most important and your most complex asset you have as a business. And you always hear businesses talk about my most valuable asset that I have is my people. But the second part of that is they are also the most complex asset that you have, and the one that you have the least amount of control over, because they're people, and you shouldn't have control over them. But so you have to recognize that, and you have to, the more widespread you get, the more you have to drive the empowerment down through the business, right? Because I can't be working 24/7. I've got to sleep at some point.
Well, along those lines, Kevin, in face of industry upheavals and disruptions, what strategies can teach companies to deploy to retain that operational edge?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to understand your business first. And when I say understand your business, it's not just understanding your products, it's not just understanding your markets, it's understanding your people as well, and understanding what drives the business, and that those are the change agents of your business. Are your people. It's not the technology that's the change agent in your business. The technology is the enabler of change. It's the people. So if you focus on the people as a core part of your strategy, you find opportunities for your people, you reward the right behaviors, your business will naturally see the evolution and will naturally stay in that competitive forefront.
On having contingency plans when you have that upheaval, I'm sure allows you to have that swift adaptation to those changing market dynamics too. Scott, to wrap up, let's reflect on how streamlined operations can become the bedrock for tech firms, allowing them to thrive amidst ever-changing challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is in the question. Making sure that you do have those streamlined operations. It's a combination of structuring the teams in the right way, but also enabling them with the right policies and tech that really help to streamline the operations. I know operations is definitely your wheelhouse at Data Capable as well. What are some of the ways that you guys feel like over the last few years you've helped to streamline those operations?
Yeah, I think first and foremost here, we need to define what streamline means, because I come from a very traditional business world, and streamline to me meant efficiency and driving efficiency out of the business. Yes, and that is a process of narrower and narrower and focusing, and that doesn't necessarily serve a tech business well. You're not just trying to make your business more profitable, drive productivity out of people, because there is an inflection point here where at some point so much streamline starts to stifle innovation. So you really need to think about, how do I gain efficiency in my business in ways that aren't counterproductive to my goals in the business. And there are times in a tech business, depending on what stage you're in, you throw streamline out the window because you have growth. First and foremost, you have to meet your customers' needs. If you sold something to your customers, you need to be able to deliver on it. And that isn't always conducive to a streamlined process. So streamline where it makes sense. Understand your business first, so you know where those opportunities are and what the unintended consequences might be of it, but also know, be ready to pull back on decisions, because that's a fault we all have. We went through this decision-making process. We're confident in our decision, and don't just keep driving into those decisions foolishly when you've got to do it with your eyes wide open, and you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to accept your errors in your decision, and you have to be willing to walk back from those, because the worst thing you can do is, see the car coming at you and step on the gas pedal straight on towards it, right?
Absolutely. Well, Kevin, Scott, I appreciate your insights and advice to our audience. But once again, we're running short on time. I'd love to continue this conversation, but for now, thanks for tuning in to the Thrive podcast. If this episode added value to you, I would love to have you subscribe and share and leave us a review. And for all the tech founders and entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to visit our website at thriveadvisors.com. Remember, most businesses encounter a period of stagnation, but Thrive Advisors is here to help you build the right strategy, set it into motion, and steer your venture into success and a profitable exit. Until next time, thanks again for joining us.